His small, brown hands moved quickly, despite the sweat trickling down his forehead in the relentless Brooklyn sun. The streets were alive with the cacophony of car horns, hurried footsteps, and muffled conversations. But Jamal's voice rose above it all. "Water, just $1. Cold water," he called, his smile broad and practiced. At just 10 years old, Jamal had mastered the art of persuasion. His smile wasn't just a marketing tool, it was his armor. It hid the weight he carried, the worries about his mother's health, and the gnawing hunger that often accompanied him. As a man in a Yankees cap walked past without even glancing at him, Jamal's fingers tightened around the bottle he held aloft. He exhaled slowly, forcing himself not to take it personally. Some stopped, some didn't. He had learned that much in his 2 years selling water on this corner. A young woman with a bright green handbag paused. Her eyes lingered on Jamal's hopeful face. "How much, sweetheart?" she asked, fishing into her purse. $1, ma'am," Jamal said brightly, holding up a bottle. Her hand trembled slightly as she handed him a crumpled bill. "You're out here all alone?" she asked, her voice tinged with concern. "Yes, ma'am," he replied, his smile never faltering. "Take care of yourself, okay?" she said softly, before disappearing into the crowd. Jamal pocketed the dollar and sighed. It wasn't enough yet, not for the medicine his mom desperately needed. But he pushed the thought aside. There was still time. A loud shout pulled his attention to the street. A man leaned out of a cab, waving frantically. "Hey kid, over here!" Grabbing 2 bottles, Jamal darted across the sidewalk, weaving between pedestrians and parked cars. The man in the cab handed him a crisp bill and took the water. Before Jamal could thank him, the cab sped off. Jamal stood there, hand outstretched, the realization sinking in. The bill was fake. By the time the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the pavement, Jamal had sold enough to buy dinner and the cheapest dose of his mother's medication. His feet ached and his voice was hoarse, but he kept smiling. When he arrived at the small apartment, the air inside was stifling. His mother, Denise, lay on the worn couch, her frail body barely visible under a thin blanket. "Hey, Ma," Jamal said, forcing cheer into his tone. "Look what I got." Denise opened her eyes, the effort seeming monumental. Her smile was faint but filled with love. "You're my hero, Jamal," she whispered. Jamal's chest tightened. "I'll make some soup," he said, ducking into their tiny kitchen. He stared at the few cans on the shelf, his resolve hardening. He wouldn't let her down. The next day, Jamal was back at his corner. The sun was harsher, the crowd even more indifferent. But he kept at it, repeating his call like a mantra. As midday approached, a sleek black car pulled up. The window rolled down, revealing a man in a sharp suit. "You sellin' water, kid?" the man asked. "Yes, sir," Jamal replied, holding up a bottle. $1. The man handed him a crisp bill but hesitated as he studied Jamal's face. "You're out here every day, aren't you?" "Yes, sir," Jamal said, his smile unwavering. "Why?" the man asked, his brow furrowing. Jamal hesitated. "For my mom, she's sick. I need to help her." The man's expression softened. He opened his mouth to respond, but before he could, a passerby jostled Jamal, knocking him into the curb. Jamal braced for the impact, but a strong hand caught his arm, pulling him upright. "You okay?" the man asked, his voice laced with concern. Jamal nodded, his eyes wide. "Yes, sir, thank you." The man's gaze lingered on Jamal, something unreadable in his expression. "What's your name?" "Jamal," he replied. The man nodded. "I'm Marcus." And Jamal, "You shouldn't have to do this alone." Before Jamal could respond, Marcus turned back to his car, pulling out a phone. Jamal watched, confused, as Marcus made a series of calls, his voice firm and decisive. When Marcus finally hung up, he turned to Jamal, his eyes resolute. "Let's go see your mom." Marcus's words hung in the air, a mix of authority and compassion that left Jamal momentarily frozen. He glanced at his battered cardboard box of water bottles and then back at Marcus. Sir," Jamal began hesitantly. "I still have to sell more. I can't leave yet." Marcus's gaze softened. "Jamal, you've done enough for today. Let me help carry that." he said, motioning toward the box. Jamal hesitated, but there was something about Marcus, his calm demeanor, his unwavering tone, that made Jamal feel safe, something he hadn't felt in a long time. He handed over the box reluctantly, and the two began walking through the bustling streets toward Jamal's apartment. As they walked, Marcus asked questions, his voice casual but inquisitive. "How long have you been selling water, Jamal?" 2 years, Jamal replied. "Ever since my mom got sick. She can't work anymore, so it's just me." Marcus shook his head, his jaw tightening. "And you've been doing this every day? No school?" Jamal nodded, his voice quiet. "I used to go, but I had to stop. Mom says education is important, but so is medicine." Marcus didn't respond immediately. His silence was heavy, and Jamal felt a pang of worry. Did he say too much? Would Marcus change his mind about helping? But then, Marcus spoke, his voice firm. "You're a strong kid, Jamal, but you shouldn't have to carry this much." They reached Jamal's apartment building, a crumbling structure with peeling paint and an elevator that hadn't worked in years. Marcus followed Jamal up the narrow staircase, the smell of mildew growing stronger with each step. When they arrived at the door, Jamal fumbled with the key, his hands trembling slightly. "It's not much," he mumbled, pushing the door open. The small apartment was dimly lit, with mismatched furniture and a faint smell of soup lingering in the air. Denise stirred on the couch, her eyes fluttering open. "Jamal, you're back," she murmured, her voice weak. "Yeah, Ma," Jamal said, setting the box down gently. "I brought someone to meet you." Denise's gaze shifted to Marcus, her expression cautious. "Who's this?" she asked, her voice strained. Marcus stepped forward, extending a hand. "My name's Marcus. I met Jamal today while he was working. I wanted to see if there's anything I can do to help." Denise blinked, her brow furrowing. "Help? We don't need charity," she said, her tone defensive despite her frailty. "It's not charity," Marcus said, his voice calm but insistent. "Jamal is an incredible kid, and he's been doing more than any child his age should have to. I have the resources to make things easier for both of you. Please, let me help." Denise looked at Jamal, her eyes filled with a mix of love and guilt. "Is this what you want?" she asked him softly. Jamal nodded, his voice barely above a whisper. "Yes, Mama. He wants to help us. Maybe we can get the better medicine, the one the doctor talked about." Denise's resistance faltered. She closed her eyes, a single tear slipping down her cheek. "Okay," she said finally. "If it's what you want, Jamal." Over the next few hours, Marcus worked to learn more about their situation. He asked questions about Denise's illness, their financial struggles, and the medications she needed. Jamal sat quietly, watching as Marcus scribbled notes on his phone, making calls and jotting down responses. At one point, Marcus excused himself to step outside and take a call. Jamal stayed with his mother, her hand resting lightly on his. "Are you sure about this, Jamal?" Denise asked, her voice barely audible. "Yeah, Ma," Jamal said, his voice steady. "We need help, and I think he really wants to help us." Denise sighed, her eyes distant. "You've always been the strong one," she murmured. "Even when things got tough, you never gave up. I don't know how I got so lucky to have you." Jamal felt his throat tighten. "It's not luck, Ma. You raised me to be strong." When Marcus returned, he carried a bag of groceries and a determined expression. "I've made some calls," he said. "A doctor is coming by tomorrow to evaluate your mom, and I've arranged for someone to help with meals and cleaning. It's a start." Denise stared at him, her eyes wide. "Meals? Cleaning? Marcus, we can't afford any of that." Marcus waved her concern away. "That's the beauty of it. You don't have to. It's all taken care of." Denise opened her mouth to argue, but Marcus held up a hand. "This isn't up for debate. You need help, and I'm in a position to provide it. Let me do this." Jamal watched the exchange, his chest swelling with gratitude. For the first time in years, he felt a glimmer of hope, a chance that things might actually get better. Later that evening, after Marcus had left, Jamal sat by his mother's side, watching her drift off to sleep. The apartment was quiet, save for the faint hum of the refrigerator. Jamal stared at the ceiling, his mind racing. What if Marcus didn't come back? What if this was just a passing act of kindness and Tomorrow, they were back to square one. But deep down, Jamal didn't believe that. There was something about Marcus's sincerity, the way he had looked at Jamal like he truly saw him, that, for now, that was enough. The next morning, Jamal woke early, the light streaming through the cracked blinds. He tiptoed to the kitchen, careful not to wake his mother. As he opened the refrigerator, he saw the groceries Marcus had brought. Fresh fruit, milk, bread. It was more food than they had seen in weeks. Jamal's stomach growled, but he ignored it. He made himself a small bowl of cereal and sat at the table, savoring each bite. As he ate, he thought about what Marcus had said the day before. You shouldn't have to carry this much. Jamal had heard similar sentiments from well-meaning strangers before, but they had always been followed by hollow gestures, a pat on the head, a few extra dollars. Marcus's words felt different. They carried weight, a promise that Jamal believed he would keep. When meantime Denise woke later that morning, she seemed slightly stronger. Her color had improved, and there was a faint glimmer of energy in her eyes. You look better, Ma, Jamal said, his voice hopeful. I feel a little better, she admitted. Maybe things are turning around. Jamal smiled, the kind of smile that wasn't practiced or forced. For the first time in a long time, it felt real. Jamal finished his cereal, rinsing the bowl carefully in the sink before setting it on the drying rack. The apartment was quiet except for the distant hum of traffic outside. His mother rested on the couch, her breathing soft and even. For a moment, he allowed himself to enjoy the rare stillness. As he gazed out the window, an idea struck him. He grabbed a pen and an old envelope from the counter, scribbling down a list of the items they needed most. More medicine, fresh produce, toiletries. His mind churned with possibilities. If Marcus truly meant what he said about helping, maybe this could be the start of something better, not just for today, but for the future. Later that afternoon, Marcus returned, his presence a reassuring constant. This time, he wasn't alone. A woman in scrubs followed him into the apartment, carrying a medical bag. She introduced herself as Dr. Patel, her warm smile immediately putting Jamal and Denise at ease. Let's have a look, shall we? Dr. Patel said, kneeling beside Denise's makeshift bed. She worked with practiced efficiency, checking Denise's vitals, asking questions about her symptoms, and taking notes. Jamal watched from the corner of the room, his heart pounding. He couldn't shake the fear that the doctor might deliver bad news. But as the examination progressed, Dr. Patel's calm demeanor reassured him. When she finished, she turned to Marcus. She's weak, but with the right treatment and nutrition, I believe she can recover significantly. I'll prescribe a stronger medication and set up a follow-up visit next week. Marcus nodded. Thank you, Dr. Patel. I'll make sure everything is taken care of. Before leaving, Dr. Patel handed Jamal a small bag of supplements. These will help her regain her strength in the meantime, she said with a kind smile. And don't forget to take care of yourself, too. Jamal nodded, clutching the bag like it was the most precious thing in the world. Thank you, ma'am. After the doctor left, Marcus sat down at the small kitchen table with Jamal and Denise. Here's what I'm thinking, he began, his tone thoughtful. Jamal, you've been carrying a lot on your shoulders, and it's time for that to change. I want to enroll you back in school. Jamal froze. School? The thought filled him with equal parts excitement and dread. He missed learning, missed being around kids his age, but he couldn't imagine leaving his mother during the day. Marcus, Denise interjected, her voice faint but firm. I appreciate what you're trying to do, but Jamal is my lifeline. I don't know how we'd manage without him. You won't have to, Marcus said gently. I've hired someone to help out during the day. Her name is Miss Carla, and she'll be here tomorrow to assist with meals, cleaning, and anything else you need. Denise's eyes filled with tears. Why are you doing all this for us? Marcus leaned back in his chair, his expression thoughtful. Because someone helped me once when I was down. I know what it's like to feel stuck, like there's no way out. If I can make things better for you, even just a little, then it's worth it. Jamal swallowed hard, his chest tightening with emotion. He looked at Marcus, a mix of gratitude and awe in his eyes. Thank you, he whispered. The next morning, Miss Carla arrived, a cheerful woman with a knack for brightening even the gloomiest spaces. She wasted no time organizing the apartment, preparing a hearty breakfast for Denise, and chatting with Jamal like they were old friends. Jamal found himself smiling more than he had in weeks. For the first time, he felt like he could breathe. With Ms. Carla taking care of his mother, he could focus on other things, like the stack of old books he had tucked under his bed. He spent the afternoon reading, his mind transported to faraway worlds where kids his age went on adventures instead of selling water on the streets. As the days turned into weeks, Marcus's support became a cornerstone of their lives. He visited regularly, bringing groceries, checking in on Denise's progress, and encouraging Jamal to think about his future. One day, Marcus brought a surprise. "Jamal, I've been thinking about how hard you've worked to help your mom," he said, handing the boy a small envelope. "Open it." Jamal's hands trembled as he tore open the envelope. Inside was a prepaid card, along with a note that read, "For your hard work and dedication, use this to treat yourself and your mom." "Are you serious?" Jamal asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Marcus nodded. "You deserve it." Jamal's mind raced with possibilities. He thought of the things he could buy for his mom. New blankets, fresh flowers to brighten the room. But there was something else he wanted, something he hadn't dared to ask for. "Can I save some of this for books?" Jamal asked shyly. "I love reading, but we don't have many." Marcus's face lit up. "Absolutely. In fact, why don't we make a trip to the bookstore this weekend? You can pick out whatever you want." Jamal's smile stretched from ear to ear. "Really? That would be amazing." The trip to the bookstore was a revelation for Jamal. Rows upon rows of books surrounded him, each one a doorway to a new adventure. Marcus watched with amusement as Jamal darted from shelf to shelf, his excitement palpable. "Take your time," Marcus said. "Pick as many as you like." Jamal ended up with a small stack of books, each carefully chosen. As they left the store, Jamal clutched the bag tightly, his heart soaring. For the first time in years, he felt like a normal kid. Back at the apartment, Jamal dove into his new books, reading late into the night. Denise watched from her bed, her heart swelling with pride. She hadn't seen her son this happy in a long time. "Marcus has been a blessing, hasn't he?" she said softly. Jamal looked up, his eyes bright. "Yeah, Ma, he really has." As the months passed, the changes in their lives became undeniable. Denise's health improved steadily with proper medical care and nutrition. Jamal returned to school, excelling in his classes and making new friends. Marcus remained a constant presence, guiding them through every step of their journey. One evening, as they sat together around the kitchen table, Marcus shared an idea. "Jamal, you're a hard worker and a natural entrepreneur. Have you ever thought about starting your own business?" Jamal's eyes widened. "A business? Like what?" "Something you're passionate about," Marcus said. "Maybe something with books or helping other kids." Jamal thought about it, his mind buzzing with possibilities. He had always wanted to make a difference, to give back in some way. Maybe this was his chance. "I'll think about it," Jamal said, his voice filled with determination. In the months and years that followed, Jamal's life transformed in ways he never imagined. With Marcus's mentorship, he started a small program to provide books to kids in his neighborhood, sharing his love of reading with others. Denise continued to grow stronger, her laughter returning to their home. And through it all, Jamal never forgot the lessons he had learned: the power of resilience, the importance of kindness, and the incredible impact one person could make. For Jamal, the future was no longer something to fear, it was a bright, open horizon waiting to be explored. Jamal's return to school brought with it a mixture of excitement and trepidation. The last time he had been in a classroom felt like a lifetime ago. Now, as he stood outside the tall brick building with a neatly pressed second-hand uniform that Marcus had bought him, his heart raced. "Are you ready?" Marcus asked, standing beside him. Jamal nodded, clutching his new backpack. "Yeah, I think so." Marcus placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder. "Remember, you're here to learn and grow. You've already overcome so much. This is just the next step." With a deep breath, Jamal walked through the school's entrance, his nerves quickly melting away as a teacher greeted him warmly and led him to his new class. As he entered, the chatter of kids his age filled the room, their laughter and energy infectious. For the first time in years, Jamal felt a spark of belonging. Meanwhile, back at the apartment, Denise sat in her favorite chair by the window, the sunlight streaming over her as she crocheted a scarf. Her hands trembled slightly with each stitch, but there was a newfound vitality in her movements. Across the room, Miss Carla tidied up, humming softly to herself. Jamal must be so excited, Denise said, looking up from her project. He's been dreaming of going back to school for so long. Miss Carla smiled, setting a freshly folded blanket on the couch. He's a special boy, Denise. You've raised him well. Denise's gaze drifted to the small stack of books on the coffee table, the ones Marcus had helped Jamal pick out. It wasn't easy, she admitted, her voice tinged with emotion. But seeing him smile again, it's worth everything. As the weeks passed, Jamal began to thrive in his new environment. His teachers quickly noticed his sharp mind and eager curiosity. One day, during a math lesson, Mr. Torres, his teacher, called on him to solve a tricky problem on the board. Jamal hesitated, feeling the weight of all eyes on him, but then he remembered Marcus's words, "You've already overcome so much." He picked up the chalk and worked through the problem methodically. When he finished, Mr. Torres clapped his hands together. "Excellent work, Jamal. That's exactly right." A sense of pride swelled in Jamal's chest, and for the first time, he allowed himself to believe he was capable of more than just surviving. After school, Jamal began volunteering at a local library, inspired by his love of books and the impact they had on his life. He spent hours shelving books, helping younger kids pick out stories, and even organizing a small reading group on Saturdays. The librarian, Mrs. Nguyen, quickly became a mentor, encouraging Jamal to think about his future. "You know," she said one afternoon as they worked side by side, "you'd make a great teacher or librarian someday." Jamal looked up, surprised. "Me? A teacher?" Mrs. Nguyen smiled warmly. "Why not? You're kind, patient, and passionate about learning. Those are the best qualities a teacher can have." The idea planted itself in Jamal's mind, taking root as he imagined a life where he could inspire others the way Marcus and Mrs. Nguyen had inspired him. One evening, Marcus invited Jamal and Denise to a community event he was hosting. It was a fundraiser for a new youth mentorship program, something Marcus had been working on quietly in the background. "Jamal," Marcus said as they arrived at the venue, I want you to meet some people who believe in giving back, just like you." The room buzzed with conversation as local business owners, educators, and philanthropists mingled. Jamal felt a pang of nervousness, but Marcus guided him through the crowd, introducing him to people who listened intently to his story. As the evening progressed, Marcus took to the stage to address the crowd. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, his voice carrying through the room, "I want to share the story of someone who embodies the resilience, determination, and spirit this program aims to support." He gestured to Jamal, who stood at the edge of the room, wide-eyed. "This young man has faced more challenges in his 10 years than many of us face in a lifetime, and yet he never gave up. Jamal, would you come up here for a moment?" Jamal's heart raced as he stepped forward, the applause thundering around him. He stood beside Marcus, unsure of what to say, but Marcus leaned down and whispered, "Just speak from the heart." Jamal gripped the microphone, his voice shaky at first. "Hi everyone," he began. "My name is Jamal, and I used to think the world didn't care about kids like me. But then I met Mr. Marcus, and he showed me that there are people who do care. People who want to help." He paused, gathering his thoughts. "I just want to say thank you to everyone here for believing in kids like me. It means more than you know." The room erupted in applause, and as Jamal stepped down, he felt a warmth in his chest, a sense of purpose he had never known before. Back at home that night, Denise pulled Jamal into a hug. "I'm so proud of you," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "You've grown into such a remarkable young man." Jamal smiled, his heart full. "It's because of you, Ma. You taught me how to be strong." Over time, Marcus's mentorship program began to take shape. with Jamal becoming one of its first youth ambassadors. He helped mentor younger kids, sharing his story and encouraging them to dream big, no matter their circumstances. One day, as he stood in front of a group of kids at the library, Jamal realized how far he had come. He wasn't just surviving anymore, he was thriving, and with every word he spoke, he saw the spark of hope ignite in their eyes, just as it had in his. He knew this was just the beginning of his journey, but for the first time, he felt ready to embrace whatever the future held. As Jamal's involvement in Marcus's mentorship program grew, he began to notice the small, yet profound, changes in his life. His days were no longer defined by the hustle of selling water on the street, but by a growing sense of responsibility, community, and ambition. Yet, with every new opportunity, came a quiet question lingering in the back of his mind. What more can I do? One afternoon, Jamal found himself sitting in the library, a place that had quickly become his sanctuary. He was surrounded by the comforting scent of aged books and the soft hum of whispered conversations. In front of him lay a notebook, its blank pages beckoning him to fill them with his thoughts. He stared at it, his pencil tapping rhythmically against the wooden table. Gore, P-R-G-P-L. Gore, P-R. What's on your mind, Jamal? Mrs. Wynne asked as she approached, her gentle demeanor as calming as ever. Jamal hesitated before speaking. I've been thinking about starting something, like a club or a group for kids. You know, something where we can share our stories and help each other. Mrs. Wynne's eyes lit up. That's a wonderful idea. What kind of stories do you want to share? Jamal shrugged, a smile tugging at the corners of his mouth. Anything, really. Stories about where we come from, what we've been through, and where we want to go. She placed a hand on his shoulder. Jamal, that sounds like the beginning of something truly special. Why don't we start small? You could use the library for your meetings. Jamal's heart raced at the thought. You think kids would come? Mrs. Nguyen smiled. If you're the one inviting them, I'm sure they will. The following week, Jamal put up handmade flyers around the neighborhood. They were simple, with bold letters that read, "Tell your story, a safe space for kids to dream, share, and inspire." Beneath it, he listed the time and location, Saturday afternoon in the library's reading room. As Saturday approached, Jamal couldn't shake the nervous energy building in his chest. Would anyone show up? What if they didn't? When the day finally arrived, Jamal stood by the door of the reading room, his hands fidgeting with the hem of his shirt. The minutes ticked by, and the room remained empty. Just as his heart began to sink, he heard the sound of small, hesitant footsteps. A girl about his age appeared in the doorway, clutching a book to her chest. "Is this the story thing?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Jamal nodded, his smile breaking through his nerves. "Yeah, it is. Come on in." One by one, more kids arrived, each carrying their own air of curiosity and apprehension. By the time the clock struck 2, a small group had gathered. Jamal took a deep breath and stepped to the front of the room. "Thanks for coming," he began, his voice steady despite the flutter in his stomach. "This is a place where we can talk about our dreams, share what we've been through, and learn from each other." The kids looked at him expectantly, and Jamal realized they were waiting for him to lead by example. He took a seat in the circle and began sharing his own story about his mom, his time selling water, and the way Marcus had changed his life. As he spoke, the tension in the room eased, and the other kids began to open up. A boy named Darius shared his dream of becoming an artist but admitted he didn't have the supplies to practice. A shy girl named Mia talked about her love of animals and how she hoped to one day become a veterinarian. Each story was met with encouragement, and by the end of the meeting, the room buzzed with newfound camaraderie. Word of the group spread quickly, and within weeks more kids were attending. Jamal named the group Dream Circle, and it became a weekly fixture at the library. Marcus was thrilled when Jamal told him about it. "You've got a gift, Jamal," Marcus said during one of their conversations. "You know how to bring people together." Jamal grinned. "I just want kids to feel like they're not alone." As the months went on, Dream Circle evolved into something bigger than Jamal had imagined. With Marcus's support, they began organizing events, art workshops, book drives, and even a small talent showcase where kids could share their skills and passions. Jamal's own passion for storytelling flourished, and he began writing short stories inspired by the experiences of the kids in his group. One day, during a particularly lively meeting, Mrs. Wynn entered the room with an announcement. "Jamal," she said, "I've been talking with Marcus and we have an idea. How would you feel about turning Dream Circle into an official community program?" Jamal's jaw dropped. "Like a real program? With funding and everything?" Mrs. Nguyen nodded. "Exactly. We could reach more kids, provide more resources, and even expand to other neighborhoods." The room erupted in cheers, and Jamal's face lit up with excitement. He couldn't believe how far his little idea had come. As Dream Circle grew, so did Jamal's confidence. He began speaking at local events, sharing his story with audiences who were inspired by his resilience and vision. One evening, after giving a speech at a community fundraiser, a woman approached him with tears in her eyes. "Jamal," she said, "your story reminded me of my own son. He's been struggling, but hearing you today, I think it might give him hope." Jamal's heart swelled with pride. "Thank you, ma'am. That means a lot." At home, Denise's health continued to improve, and the apartment no longer felt like a place of struggle, but a place of growth and possibility. She often attended Dream Circle events, watching with pride as Jamal blossomed into a leader. "You're making a difference, Jamal," she told him one evening as they sat together on the couch. "You're giving kids something I always wanted for you: hope." Jamal smiled, leaning into her. "I learned it from you, Ma. You never gave up, even when things were hard." One day, Marcus surprised Jamal with a visit to a publishing house. "I've been hearing a lot about your stories," Marcus said as they entered the sleek office building. "I thought it was time someone else did too." Jamal stared at him in disbelief. "You mean they're going to read my stories?" Marcus grinned. "Not just read them. If they like what they see, they might even publish them." The meeting went better than Jamal could have imagined. The editor was impressed by his heartfelt, authentic writing and offered to feature one of his stories in a youth anthology. By the time Jamal turned 12, he had achieved more than he ever thought possible. Dream Circle had expanded to 3 locations, his story had been published, and his mother's health had stabilized. Yet through it all, Jamal remained humble, driven by the same desire that had motivated him from the start: to make life better for those who needed it most. One evening, as he stood in front of a packed auditorium at a Dream Circle gala, Jamal looked out at the sea of faces: kids, parents, mentors, and community leaders who had come together to celebrate the program's success. He took a deep breath, his heart full. "This isn't just about me," he began, his voice steady and clear. "This is about all of us. It's about believing that no matter how hard life gets, we can rise above it. We can dream, we can fight, and we can build something better together." The applause was deafening, and as Jamal stepped off the stage, Marcus met him with a proud smile. "You've come a long way, kid," Marcus said, clapping him on the back. Jamal grinned. "And I'm just getting started." Enjoyed this story? Watch the next video for another great one, and be sure to subscribe for more exciting tales.